Hello, and welcome to the Field Guides. I'm Steve, and I'm here with the Western New York Land Conservancy Volunteers of the Year, Bill and Daniel.
Well, thank you.
That was great. That was great. I was not expecting that.
No.
I didn't know if we were going to bring it up or not.
So tell people what you're talking about.
Yeah, recently, well, hold on a second. I don't even know what the name of the event was called.
It was their conservation celebration.
Okay, so at this year's Western New York Land Conservancy's conservation celebration, we were named the Volunteers of the Year.
Somehow.
Yeah.
So longtime listeners, you might remember that we've done a few episodes with the Western New York Land Conservancy, trying to make people aware of specific projects that they were involved in, helping them to spread the word and hopefully helping them raise funds.
Yeah.
And they were kind enough to express their appreciation to us. And Daniel, what did they give us? I thought it was pretty sweet.
They gave us these really awesome, handcrafted boot racks.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I thought we were going to get some kind of, plaque or something.
Super kind. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just blown away by how kind they were. They gave us the VIP treatment. And it was great.
Oh, literally. Yeah, we got to hang out in the VIP section.
It was very unusual for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to kind of cover for Daniel, show him what to do,
Yeah.
which fork to use.
I'm normally in the peasant section,
So thank you to everyone at the Western New York Land Conservancy, especially Andrew. I feel he was the one that kind of made that happen for us, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And check out the Western New York Land Conservancy and their work, but we have to finish our proper intro.
Oh, right.
Yes. This is the Field Guides. Each episode we pick a natural history topic, research the science behind that topic, and then take you out to a natural spot and share everything that we've learned. And today, Daniel is taking us into uncharted territory because we have never, ever done an episode on a topic like this.
Or at this location.
That's
like a double, new thing for us. We repeat locations a lot, but I'm happy to be here.
Steve and I are here shaking in our gum leaf boots.
We actually are wearing them.
I'm shaking in my Cabela's mid-hikers.
All right, so Daniel, tell us, where are we and what are we doing here?
We are currently at the Burt Dam Fisherman's Park here in Burt, New York, just outside of Olcott and Lake Ontario. And that is because the topic for today is one of the most interesting, ecologically, ethically, economically focused topics here in the Western New York world. It's something that brings in thousands of people from around the country to our tributaries into Lake Ontario. It is the fall salmon run that occurs every year. And we are currently at 18 Mile Creek. It is one of the tributaries that runs into Lake Ontario, and this place is famous for the annual Chinook salmon and coho salmon migration, the spawning run that occurs here each fall. So as we're here walking today to discuss this phenomenon, the insane history behind it, and hopefully get to see a couple salmon swimming around, we will be in the presence of a lot of people fishing, and you're already noticing that.
We just walked by a fisherman out in the middle of the creek. Yeah.
So you might hear some background noise. Yeah, we got a great blue heron over there that Steve just pointed out. And again, the reason why I wanted to pick this topic is because even if you're somebody that's not really into fish or the hobby or passion of fishing, it has such a wild history to it. One of the craziest aspects of game management, and it is just a really interesting topic there. Now, the history of salmon being here in the Great Lakes is pretty complicated. And before we dive into all that sort of thing, I'll get into taxonomy right off the bat so we can kind of get that understood. Yeah. And then, because once we get rolling into all the other insane topics behind this, I'm not going to want to stop that train there. So they're chordata, obviously, vertebrates. The class, I'm going to try not to butcher this one.
Actinopterygii. Am I wrong?
You are right. You are correct.
Whoa, Steve.
I'm a fish guy now.
That wasn't how I was going to pronounce it, so I'm glad that you said it because I probably would have butchered it. So do you know what that is?
Rayfin fish?
Rayfin fishes. Very good. Nicely done.
Daniel is so turned on right now.
How can you tell?
They don't call me a doctor of biology.
Is that a fishing rod, or are you just happy to see me? So the Salmoniformes that's the trout and salmon order, and within that order there is one extant family, and that is Salmonidae, and these include the salmon, trout, char, grayling, whitefish, and ciscos. So many of these fish are diagamous. Do either of you know what that means?
Nope.
That
Oh, I think I do. is that where they do different parts of their life cycle in different spots, like whether one's in the ocean versus in a, I want to say like a creek because that's where we're at right now. But
A freshwater area.
yeah,
So you were
freshwater
the-
versus
Versus saltwater, yeah.
Okay.
So it means that their life cycle will take them into both freshwater and saltwater environments. Now, if you want to get more specific, the two salmon that we're talking about are anadromous. And that specifically means most of their life, their adult life, is spent out in an ocean, and then they return to a freshwater river or tributary to spawn. So that's the big thing there. It's for the spawning purposes.
Okay.
So that's where the coho and Chinook salmon lie here. So,
But wait. So are these ones that we're going to be seeing today, are they saltwater?
where they're originally from, yes. Yeah.
Like
They
a
are.
long time ago, or they were stocked here?
They're stocked here.
Okay.
So that's what we'll get into.
Okay.
And it's a crazy, the Great Lakes pretty much substitute the role the ocean played for them, where they're from in the Pacific Northwest.
Wait, the Great Lakes are freshwater?
That's not one of the fish we're talking about,
Yes,
is
it
it?
is.
Oh my gosh.
Holy.
Yeah.
All right. They missed my my comment, but that's
Sorry.
okay. So up on this little slope above us, there is a fish that someone caught and
That salmon was probably caught, had its eggs taken out of it for fishing bait and other things, and then the carcass discarded along the side.
holy cow.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, so I would guess that's what happened with that one.
And just
And that pisses me off.
describe to people though
Yeah.
how big that is.
So that's a Chinook salmon, a mature one spawning, probably like maybe 2.5 feet long?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That is-
That's about average size.
Startling.
Yeah. So they're big. And that's why they're called the king or Chinook salmon. They're the biggest. So while we are going to talk about coho and king salmon, the king salmon is the one that gets stocked a lot more. That's the one all the emphasis is on. All hail the king. That's just how it is
Got it.
around here.
Wait, are you going to say what Chinook means? I'm just curious if...
You know what? I don't know what Chinook
Okay.
means.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was just
because I
curious.
usually call them king, so
Okay.
I never thought of
We'll
that.
put it in the episode notes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
We can break down their scientific name though. So
Okay.
where do we stop at? Family? Did we get to the family? Yes, we
Yes.
got to family. So now I'm gonna get to genus. The genus is Oncorhynchus, and it means like hooked snout. So if you look, that salmon has a little bit of a hook on the jaw, and the males especially, when they spawn, they undergo these radical changes we'll talk about later, but they develop what's called a kype. It's this hooked jaw on them, and it plays some kind of role in sexual selection.
The lower, yeah, the jaw.
Mostly the
jaw.
lower, yeah, and they develop big teeth too. So that's where that comes from.
Since I'm more of a bird guy, I'm thinking of on a shrike, a toenail tooth, but on the
Whoa.
jaw, the bottom, the
Ah.
bottom of the mouth instead of the top.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. Kind of like the shrike there.
Nerd.
So
Steve, can you get a picture of the fish and then
Sure.
we can put that on the
Yeah.
we'll put that on the episode page.
the scientific name for the coho salmon is Oncorhynchus kasuch. The kasuch is just the name that they're called in Russia. So these are fish that are from the Pacific Northwest, and that also includes the opposite side of the Pacific, which will be like the Russia, Japan area for
Right.
some of these fish here. It has 2 dorsal fins on the top, which Steve is getting a close look at now. The one closer to the rear is just kind of a very small fin that doesn't have any rays. You okay, Steve?
Yeah.
Oh, that was majestic. The small fin closer to the tail or the caudal fin is called the adipose fin. It's mostly just fatty tissue, and that plays a role later when we talk about the stocking there. So they got those 2 dorsal fins on the top. They're this like dark blue to greenish color on the top, and they have these silvery sides and a silver belly. And right now Bill's looking at it and going, that's not what they look like. That's what they look like when they spawn. So they undergo changes again. So we'll get into that. They have these small dark spots on their back and the sides, and typically in the upper lobe of that tail fin, just the upper part. A big feature for identification is they have usually 13 or sometimes a few more of those rays on their anal fins, which are the bottom fins closest to their vent. So that's kind of a distinction from the Chinook salmon. So their traditional range, where they are native to, are both sides of the North Pacific Ocean, from Japan and eastern Russia, around the Bering Sea to mainland Alaska, and south to Monterey Bay, California. But like the Chinook salmon, they have been transplanted to other parts of the world, and sometimes by unknown origin. Okay, so the Chinook salmon are very similar, but they tend to have like 15 to 17 of those anal fin rays. The dark spots on the upper tail that the coho also have, with the Chinook salmon, they extend down for most of the tail. So that's one of the differences there. Those dark spots at the top tend to be more pronounced. And the biggest difference, and I think this is what like game wardens use when they're trying to make sure that people are following the catch limits and things, are both of them have black mouths, but the coho salmon has a white gum line. So it looks like white and black banding, where the Chinook salmon is just black.
Oh.
So that's a big feature. Now, usually size is one too. The king salmon is bigger, but if you get two that are similar size, that's a big feature for them.
So can you repeat that, the lip feature that you talked about? Just drive that home.
Yeah, so they both have these like black mouths, but it's the coho salmon that has this white gum line. So when you open up the mouth, you'll see this band of black and white. Versus for a Chinook salmon, you're going to see mostly just black.
Okay.
Got it.
And when they're in their lake form, they look very similar. They're both very silvery, and it can be hard to tell the difference.
All right, I'm going to remember black chin
Black chin.
for Chinook salmon.
So the Chinook salmon, again, they're native to the North Pacific Ocean and the river systems of Western North America, ranging from California to Alaska, as well as Asian rivers ranging from northern Japan in the Arctic to northeast Siberia. They've been introduced to other parts of the world, including here, New Zealand, and Patagonia. So their range is kind
Holy
of a weird thing to talk about because they're a popular sport fish. They taste really good, so people have like planted them in various places. And the Great Lakes is one of the big stories of that, which we'll get into. This is such a super complicated topic because the different populations of salmon behave differently. They might spawn during different times of the year. They might look a little bit different. They'll have a different diet. So it's very regionally based. So just know there's like a lot of variability here. But the DEC website has a really good kind of just overview of what happens with the salmon fishery here. So this is from that website.
And remember, folks, that's New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation.
The coho and Chinook salmon are spawned at the Salmon River Hatchery. This is in Atmar, New York, north of Syracuse, east of Pulaski. During the month of October, the eggs hatch out in late November through December, and Chinook salmon are stocked as 3-inch fingerlings in May or June. So besides shore stocking, where they'll just dump the fish in, a lot of the salmon are also pen stocked. And this is important. Pen stocking is a cooperative effort between the New York State DEC and area sportsman groups. Pen stocking allows recently stocked fish a chance to acclimate to their new surroundings and protects them from predators. So instead of just dumping fish in the creek or the river or wherever, you put them in a pen so they can grow a little bit. And another reason why this is important is because eventually the salmon reach a point where they smolt, and this is when they enter a new stage in their life and they imprint on that creek. So when they go out to the lake and spend their life as an adult, when they're ready for sexual maturity and to go on that spawning run, they'll come back to that exact creek that they imprinted on.
Whoa.
So
like,
it's with like 90% accuracy. They say with the salmon that it's mostly from the scent.
Okay.
The scent there. So after they smolt and they imprint on a stream, they'll migrate out to the lake. And the coho salmon, it's a little bit different. They're stocked as pre-smolt fall fingerlings at about 10 months of age. They'll be about 4.5 inches long, or as 6-inch yearlings at about like 16 months of age. Because the life history of coho salmon is a bit different. They'll actually stay in the streams for about a year before they smolt and move down to the lake. Chinook salmon, it's a bit faster. That's another reason why Chinook salmon now dominate the stocking, because you can get them in faster, they'll go out to the lake faster, and it's cheaper to do that there. So once they reach the lake, the salmon grow rapidly on a diet of alewives mostly. That's their primary forage base. And the Chinook salmon return to rivers where they were stocked, ranging from 1 to 4 years of age, but age 2 and 3 fish are about 90% of the run. So that's like that one right there. Looks like an age 2 probably.
For the non-fishermen among us, what are alewives?
Alewives, they're a huge part of later, so I will really dive into that. It's a small fish. It's a small bait fish.
We shocked up a lot of alewives today.
Oh, did
Lots
you?
of schools of them, yeah.
Yeah, they are a huge part of the story and the ethics behind it. So we'll get to that there. The age 2 and 3 fish make up about 90% of the run. Those fish will weigh between 15 and 25 pounds. So mature coho salmon typically return to spawn as age 2 and will average about 8 to 10 pounds. But get this, the New York State record coho salmon is 33 pounds, 7 ounces, and was 41.9 inches long. This is also the current world record. That's pretty interesting.
From here?
From here, it's in the Salmon River.
And did they like officially
I think
age
it was
it
in
and
the
everything?
Salmon River.
That's
might
like
have.
the record fish in general, not just assuming that it's 2. Didn't you say 2 years or old, or did you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, most of them return as age 2 fish for the
Okay,
coho salmon.
but this
So
one
it's-
may have been older and
could
bigger.
be, but it's because
Okay.
that's the majority
It's
of
a
the
beast.
ones that run back. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you talk about how fast they grow, that's another reason why they're desired for the fishery there. So while the king salmon will average like 15 to 20 pounds, and this varies by region, the state record Chinook or king salmon was caught in the Salmon River in 1991, and it was 47 pounds, 13 ounces, 48 inches long. But the crazy thing is, while the coho salmon state record here is also the world record, the biggest salmon out in the Pacific Northwest, Chinook salmon, king salmon, exceed 100 pounds.
Wow.
So I don't know what that discrepancy is there.
They're like
so
they're as big as me.
That warrants further investigation there. Yeah. So the maturing Pacific salmon, they begin to stage off of the river mouths from mid to late August. So this is a period where they begin to feed heavily and get ready for that spawning run. So this is a time when they're extremely sought after by boats a little bit closer to the tributaries that they're going to spawn in. So this is like when the salmon run kind of begins to start. By early September, some fish have usually started to trickle into the tributaries. The peak of the run, when the best stream fishing occurs, is usually only like 4 weeks long. So it's a real carpe diem moment out in the fishing world. I mentioned this a bit earlier, but on
That
rivers...
means seize the day, folks.
Seize the carp.
Well, you didn't see... I can't remember the movie.
Nice.
Seize the carp.
Oh my God.
On
done,
rivers
Steve.
whose flows are controlled by hydropower dams, such as the Salmon River in Oswego, the peak period normally occurs from mid-September through mid-October. Other places, it's really dependent on rainfall. And because we had a hot summer, a relatively dry summer, and this fall's been like hot and not very rainy, it's delayed. Like normally, there would be tons of people here. I
It's rainy right now.
Yeah, a little bit of rain.
Well, when are we here? I don't think we said. Like, when are we here?
So what is it now? October 7th?
Something like that.
Am I right?
October 8th.
Yeah, and we picked this date because this is like usually when the run is heated up, but it looks like it's a little bit delayed here this year. There.
But we should get to see salmon today, right?
We should. Yeah,
Okay.
we absolutely should.
Besides the dead one over there.
I think we have a very good chance. We have a very good chance. So once the Chinook and coho salmon enter the streams, they're no longer feeding. So you can catch them on lures and egg sac bait by other means, maybe by triggering aggression. Maybe they do get some kind of like sustenance from it. That's still a topic people don't really know. There's a lot of debates about that. And during the spawning run, they change dramatically. Both fish will darken in color to like a muddy brown or olive green color. So now Bill's like, oh, now that dead fish looks a little bit more accurate now. But the coho salmon, they'll also develop like a reddish coloration on their side. They're really cool looking. They'll develop that big kype that I mentioned earlier with the big teeth, and that's related to sexual selection. And those teeth are used, they think, to combat other males when they're fighting for spawning territory. Females will build nests, or in the fish world we call them reds. They're little depressions in the gravel, and they're made by the female where she turns on her side and she uses her tail to dislodge stones and pebbles. So she'll like thrash violently, and I've seen them do this a lot, and it'll like kick up and create that depression. The males will fight with other males for spawning rights with the female. The dominant male will court the female, and upon spawning, they release the eggs and the milt, which is the fish sperm, simultaneously. The eggs will settle into the gravel, and the female will cover the eggs with loose gravel and then move upstream to possibly prepare another red. After the males and females do all this, do you know what happens?
No.
They die.
Oh.
They die.
Okay.
So as the salmon run progresses, you'll see more and more salmon dead washed up along the sides because they die after they spawn. That one being far away from the water makes me think that it was, taken and they took the eggs out and threw it up there. But yeah, you'll see a bunch of salmon dying. And that's a big part of the ecology of the Pacific Northwest because the salmon that run and die, bears eat them, eagles, other animals, when they decompose, they release nutrients back into the creek. So it's a big part of that run is that they die.
What's the timeline? Like, how long does it take them after,
Laying eggs?
doing it? Yeah.
I don't know the exact time, but usually by the time they're laying eggs, they're getting pretty close. And Steve Lindley is the director of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Fisheries Ecology Division, and he explained it as this, because it sounds so weird. Like, what do you mean they just die? This is a quote. He's in an article where he said, essentially, many of the activities that operate in immature salmon to allow them to maintain their health, grow, and mature are turned off after maturation, and without maintenance, they pretty rapidly fall apart. And they do.
Wow.
Like, we call them zombie salmon. Like, they'll literally be rotting. And normally around Halloween, there's a lot of them. So it's always like a cool little thing there.
All right. So bear with me here because I know less than nothing about fish. So this is all completely new to me. So right now, with what you just described with the reds, is that for the king and the coho salmon?
Yes.
So when you were asking before, how old was that fish when it was caught? It probably couldn't be more than 2 years old because don't they all die after they spawn then?
Oh.
But that's if they run. So if they don't run, if they don't initiate that spawning process, they're not going to all just, like, it's not like they all die at 2 years old, what if they run or not?
Okay.
It's the running
So
that triggers that response.
they could be out in the lake for more than a year or two.
Yes, it's just unusual.
And are you going to talk about what triggers that?
So
We don't know.
we don't really know.
Okay.
Yeah, one part of it is fitness, of course. Like if they're ready for it and up to it, they're gonna go. But there's like if a salmon just decides not to, I haven't like read about
Right.
that, or like that salmon that reached 100 pounds. I doubt that salmon came back in like 4 years. It was probably after 4 years because there is variability, but I'm not exactly sure, other than fitness, what'll tell them to
Right.
go.
Right.
You know?
Time to die.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, and that's an aspect that, so the shit that we see there of somebody possibly poaching a salmon for its eggs, people justify that in their heads because the salmon, they're like, oh, they're gonna die anyway, screw it. But it's like, they're gonna die because they're literally allocating all of their resources and energy to maximize the chances of survival of their young. That's
Right.
why, like, it's not like it's like, oh, we just go and die. Like, there's a purpose for that.
Right.
It's to allow them to, like, this paper that I read, it was focusing more into the aging, and literally they called it reproductive suicide of Pacific salmon and then other creatures, and discussed like the hormonal and chemical changes that occur in their bodies that will prioritize gamete development or the sex cells. It'll promote like energy for sustained swimming, but it'll cut back on their immune system. The body maintenance goes away, muscle atrophy will occur. So like they make this huge sacrifice to maximize the chances, get as far as they can if they need to, and dodge these crazy obstacles. You know, you'll see videos of them jumping over waterfalls and stuff. That takes a lot of strength, you know, and they do that to help ensure the survival of their young. Yes.
So
Yes, Steve, thank you for raising your hand.
So I know you're
This is
starting to get
kindergarten.
into the ethics of this a little bit, and I just want to let you know that I have a degree in philosophy. And
Oh.
my animal ethics professor did say, because we sort of noticed we weren't talking about fish all that much, so someone brought it up and he said, well, fish are just plants with eyes. So he wasn't really extending any ethical choices towards fish. I don't know if he seriously meant it or this was like a joke among animal ethicists or whatever, but so thoughts.
You know, I haven't heard that before. I see why fish are looked at as differently, because they at least appear to us as more simple, more stimulus based. You know, we can't relate to them as much.
They don't have opposable thumbs.
But that's the biggest thing. Yeah. But
Also,
I remember saw
they're
this.
ray-finned fish, and as humans, we should be on team lobe-finned fish.
Oh,
because
okay.
humans are lobe-finned fish.
You know what?
So,
I never thought of it that way. You know,
Yeah,
that salmon
all
got what he
tetrapods.
deserves up there. now.
Yeah.
Or she probably. She had
I'm
to
only
say.
looking out for fellow
So-
lobe-finned fish. So
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I saw this like meme before because like, you know, all the problems that the giant bluefin tuna face, and activists are like, why do people not care? They're a giant 1,000-pound super majestic fish. And there was a tuna swimming and it had like a rhinoceros horn taped to its head. It was like, if I was a rhino, would you care? Because they're like rhino size. So when you were talking about that, that's what I got, you know, in my head there. But the other thing is too, like when the salmon craze happened here in the Great Lakes, snagging was allowed. So people would literally come in with treble hooks and not like trick the fish into biting your bait. They just ram the treble hook in the side of the fish and reel it in. That's how they caught them.
What's a treble hook?
So a treble hook is, a lot of times they'll have a weight on them, but it's a fishing hook that has 3 points. So it's a lot more effective at like snatching.
So it
Either,
doesn't
like,
need to get their mouth or anything. It's just you're just hooking anything.
I've seen many salmon caught in the ass.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that, I think, was 1994 that became outlawed, but people are like, well, man, I used to do it all the time back in the day.
And
So
what do
they
you call it? Snatching? Or what is it?
Snagging.
Snagging.
Snatching is another term used, but you'll still see that. I mean, the other day I was cleaning up trash along the river and I found these big weighted treble hooks right in a hole where I've seen salmon before.
Huh.
So people still do it, and it happens here all the time
Wow.
at this place. So, and again, the justification is that they die after they spawn.
Yeah, yeah.
How's it going? Any luck? A few?
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, we got some browns.
Good. Nice.
I just had, I think, a salmon, but how many punk-ass kids are
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
there? So, time to go back to the campsite.
All right.
All right, better luck next time.
Good luck.
Hey, at my age, I'm happy to still be doing it.
Yes, sir. And that sums up Burt Dam salmon fishing in one sentence there.
I was going to say, excuse me, sir, are you a snagger or a
Oh
snatcher?
my god. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the biggest question is, why are they here? Have you ever learned why they're here or
Why are
anything
who
like
here?
that? The Pacific salmon. Why are they here in the Great Lakes? Some people ask that. Wait a minute, they're from the Pacific Northwest. Why the hell are they here?
Oh, and obviously the answer can't be because they were introduced. There's a reason behind that, right? Yeah.
There is. You know, somebody did have a plan.
All right, yeah. What was it?
So there's a paper that was written in 1973, but it's really exhaustive. It's 75 pages long. It's called The History of Salmon in the Great Lakes, 1850 to 1970. And it was this like crazy amount of statistics about all of these stocking efforts of various salmon species in various tributaries and parts of our Great Lakes. And it was pretty much like massive failure after failure. People would stock thousands of this type of salmon in this tributary, and then a few years later when they were expected to spawn, none came back. And it was like that for a long time. And the author, J.W. Parsons, he summed it up as this: somehow up until about 1950, apparently the right species of the right size or age was never planted at the right place at the right time and in adequate numbers to establish either a temporary fishery or a permanent population. In light of developments of 1960 to 70, it hardly seems possible that they could have failed entirely. So it was all this crazy stocking and failing. But in the 1960s, that's when all the craziness happened, and those are the developments that led to the current fishery that we have today.
So you're saying people kind of figured out what to do, where to release them, which species?
It wasn't even so much figured out, it's just that the crazy things happened in the Great Lakes that created the perfect circumstances for it.
And you're going to talk
And the
about those
one guy-
crazy things?
That's what I'm going into.
All right.
And the book that really does a good job explaining this, Bill, I've mentioned this to you, The Death and Life of the Great Lakes
It's on
by
my
Dan
list.
Egan.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a good one.
My
And
not to read list.
come on, man. Bill's like, oh, that has something to do with fish? I'm not reading about
I read
it.
a Great Lakes book one time. Does
Good for you, Steve.
Margaret Wooster, is that a name?
Oh, yeah.
That she wrote a book?
Yeah, she spoke recently in the area. I think she's local.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason I wanted to read it. I remember almost nothing from the book, but I do remember enjoying it. So
Well, that's good.
So check out Margaret's book, guys. something Great Lakes.
That was really convincing. I think I'm going to add that right to my thrift books list when I get
read
home.
it in 2011 or 2012.
We'll put both of those in the episode notes, but we'll find out the exact title of the Margaret Worcester book.
Perfect. So you have to understand that historically, before humans came and messed everything up, with the Great Lakes geography, they were isolated from the rest of the world. Lake Erie is drained by the Niagara River. It plunges over Niagara Falls into Lake Ontario, and then all that water gets drained through the St. Lawrence River into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, connecting it to the ocean. But even though it was connected, the 189 miles from Montreal to Lake Ontario were these vicious, impassable torrents that make right now Whirlpool State Park look like nothing. They were terrifying. So that prevented people from working their way up from the ocean, and it prevented a lot of oceanic life from finding its way into Lake Ontario. And even if they did, what would prevent them from going from Lake Ontario and swimming up to the other lakes?
Niagara Falls.
Yeah, about a 170-foot waterfall. That sounds like a solid barrier, right? So what you saw was, with the expansion of the St. Lawrence Seaway, allowing ships in with different biological cargo, and with the construction of the Erie Canal and Welland Canal, you were connecting the Great Lakes to the ocean. So that's when these invasive species started to creep in. So there's two real key players in the story. The first one is the terrifying one. This is the first invasive species I ever learned about. It's the one that looks like a snake with a fat head. It latches onto its victims.
I know.
With the suction cup mouth rimmed with teeth. Bill, who is this?
The sea lamprey.
The sea lamprey, correct.
Yeah.
10 points to Bill.
What a nightmare.
Really. It has an anticoagulant toxin in its saliva, and its tongue is like a rasp. So it latches onto fish, usually with small scales, and chisels away at their scales. The anticoagulant allows for a continuous flow of blood, and they feed off the fish's blood, oftentimes killing it, unless it's a really big fish.
Nightmare, but you got to admit it's cool.
A total nightmare. The first sea lamprey was discovered in Lake Ontario in 1835, suspiciously after the Erie Canal's completion and opening in 1825. Most thought that's how it arrived in Lake Ontario, even though there is some speculation that maybe they were already in Lake Ontario, and it was the Welland Canal that bypassed Niagara Falls and gave it free range to the other Great Lakes. So by 1921, they're in Lake Erie. By 1936, they're in Lake Michigan, Lake Huron in 1937, Lake Superior in 1938. And this is just when they were discovered. And when they started growing in population through the 40s, they began to really decimate a bunch of the fish of the Great Lakes, especially our lake trout. So in 1944, the Lake Michigan lake trout commercial harvest was nearly 6.5 million pounds. 5 years later, it dropped to 343,000 pounds. 5 years after that, zero. They were extirpated.
Whoa.
Yeah, so between overfishing and mostly the sea lamprey, they got wiped out. So
Wow.
there's a big problem there. But now by the 1950s, when the sea lamprey infestation was at its peak, there was a University of Michigan grad student named Vernon Applegate. He just completed his dissertation called The Natural History of the Sea Lamprey, Petromyzon marinus, in Michigan. It was 344 pages, and it was all about the life history, where they spawn, what habitats. So finally, we understood them, and we knew where to implement the lampricides that were being developed in the 50s and 60s and continue to be used to this day. So with that, by like 1967, researchers figured they're on their way to getting the sea lamprey population down to 1/10 of what it was at its peak. As all this craziness is going on, the alewives that I mentioned earlier, these small little silvery fish, was found in Lake Ontario in 1873, and they began to spread like crazy. And part of the reason was because there was no predators left. There was nothing to keep them in check. The lake trout were like extirpated from a lot of these places. So from 1962 to 1965, biologists estimated the biomass percentage of alewives, of total fish biomass, went from 17% to 90% of the fish mass in Lake Michigan.
Oh, whoa.
So you're looking at a lake filled with alewives. In 1967, a pilot flying over Lake Michigan observed a mass of dead or dying alewives approximately 50 miles long. He looked at the shorelines.
Jeez.
Eventually, the fish carcasses floated and buried the shores of Chicago, a 30-mile stretch, in rotting fish, in some places shin deep. So there's a huge problem. It costs millions of dollars to pick up. So you're looking at this situation where you have like an unlimited supply of baitfish. They'll grow like crazy and then have these mass die-offs. They're sensitive to cold, and you have no predators to keep them in check. What do you do
Wow.
here?
I don't know. I feel like at that point I would be in like a nervous sweat, being like, "What did we do?" Like that sounds hard to come back from.
Yeah.
Did they reintroduce lake trout or?
That was what Vernon Applegate wanted to do. So Lake Superior, because they had some more like sea lamprey resistant strains, they had some surviving stocks out in Lake Superior. He wanted to create a giant fish hatchery program and then start to reintroduce them now that the sea lampreys were somewhat kept in check and there was all these bait fish. But that's not what happened because of literally one man named Howard Tanner, who in 1964 became Michigan's chief of fisheries. Upon taking the job, as a fellow walks by with a gigantic salmon in his grasp, upon taking the job, his boss told him, get out there and do something spectacular. Okay, so he was a fisherman his whole life. He worked out west, so he was familiar with Pacific salmon. He received a call from an old colleague from his time out west that Oregon had just come up with new methods to have their hatchery program of coho salmon be a lot more efficient, and they had coho salmon eggs to share. So he pretty much unilaterally made the decision to get these fish into Lake Michigan. No consulting other states, no consulting Canadian authorities.
It was a different time.
Wild, yeah.
Yeah.
So less than 4 months of him being on the job, Oregon gave 1 million coho eggs to Michigan. They began their lives in a Michigan hatchery in the winter of 1965, and then in April of 1966, they were released into various tributaries in Lake Michigan. So these coho salmon, they spend their first year or so, like I mentioned, or year and a half, in the rivers and streams where they hatch before returning to the ocean, or in our case, Lake Michigan, for about 18 months, and then they'll spawn. So what they had expected was in the summers of 66 and 67, they'd stay out in the lake, and then in the fall of 67, that second year class would all start spawning. But because there was literally an unlimited supply of baitfish, a lot of coho salmon started coming back after just that 1 year.
Oh.
So people went out fishing in a dead lake, and now they're hooking these 7-pound silvery football-sized fish that fight like hell.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing, this is great. So it was something that made people really excited. So they knew that if it was looking good right now, the next year when that second year class comes in, all hell's gonna break loose. And that's exactly what happened. So in the fall of 1967, hundreds or tens of thousands of salmon ran up the tributaries, and people started catching coho salmon in excess of 20 pounds. So just think, they're stocked as 6 inches long in April of 1966. In the fall of 1966, they're 7 pounds. I mean, that's crazy.
Because they're eating all the alewives.
They're eating all the alewives. They have an unlimited supply of baitfish.
What's happened with the lampreys?
The lamprey they're still there, but they have been somewhat controlled, so they're not playing as big of a role.
Okay.
They also prefer lake trout.
Oh,
And
so
we'll
they
get
see
into
this.
that
They
later.
see the salmon and they're like, nah.
In a way, yeah. It's more because of where they spend time in the water column. But we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
And then
How we doing?
Then there was not a real effort then to reintroduce the lake trout?
You had smaller scale, lake trout programs being reintroduced, but this was the focus because of the craze that ensued.
Right.
So in 1967, when those tens of thousands of salmon went up the tributaries, salmon fever started. Motels, restaurants, tackle shops for miles around saw a huge boom in business, and thousands of anglers descended upon these tributaries en masse. Like there weren't enough parking lots, gas stations ran out of gas, tackle stores ran out of tackle. It was madness. During just that 3-month run period in the fall of 1967, northeastern Michigan, just the retail, saw an $11.9 million bump. So you can see why there's a lot of emphasis on this.
What's that in 2024 dollars?
I don't know, man.
Come on,
I'm not
Daniel.
good with money, man. Do I look like a guy that's good with money?
It's more.
It's more. So boat
It
ramps,
was a bump.
parking lots, marinas, motels, they were all being hastily constructed. So we began to create our infrastructure to accommodate the salmon run here. The stocking program, because of how successful it was, you had like Great Lakes that were devoid of sport fish. Now having these big Pacific salmon, people are like, I thought I had to go to Alaska. Now I can look at skyscrapers in Chicago and catch a salmon. Like it became this crazy thing. So the other Great Lakes started to hop on board for this program. So in 1967, Michigan expanded the stocking program to include the king or Chinook salmon, and then they would eventually take over, and there's a lot more of them stocked because they grow bigger, they're cheaper to raise, and they can be planted earlier. By 1968, Pacific salmon were in all 5 of the Great Lakes.
Wow, so it's so fast.
Yeah.
They're just
Wow.
like a handful of years.
Because people saw what happened and they're like, I want a piece of that. So they all hopped on board. And certain people were like, but what about lake trout? What about our native predator?
That was me.
Yeah, that
And
was
everyone's
Bill.
like, shut up. We
So-
want money.
As you got into the 70s and 80s, the planting numbers grew into several millions of Chinook salmon. What happened was alewife populations now began to decline in the 1990s, and Chinook salmon catch rate plunged to just 15% of what it was in the 80s. And now we're in kind of this weird stage of management that we'll talk about. So this taught me that, I hope that guy's okay. This taught me that the alewife is the primary forage base of the Chinook salmon, and it told everybody that the alewives need to be maintained. This is a problematic invasive fish that now people want to maintain.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it? You go ahead.
So the lesson here is the Great Lakes are really messed up.
Yeah. So get this then. I attended a fisheries meeting when I was a student for the Great Lakes Ecology class at UB, taught by the great Professor Helen Domsky. I had to attend 2 fisheries meetings. One was nearby in Lockport. I think it's the Cornell Extension building. But I went to a meeting there, and it was focused on what the Chinook salmon do, king salmon do with their time out in the lake, what the lake trout are doing, and also talking about stocking cuts. They're going to reduce the stocking because the alewives weren't doing so great to ensure the fishery doesn't crash. So turn around. There's a king salmon right at the top of the water. See him? He's got a white nose.
I do.
Yeah. So that's a little one.
I don't see it.
Yeah.
Steve missed it.
Right.
Oh,
he's still
right
See
there?
him?
I
Yeah,
see it.
that's
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
one. Yeah, so there's a salmon swimming
Nice.
right behind us.
Yeah.
A live
See,
one.
when I see that one, that size, I'm like, is that a coho salmon? It could be, because it's a bit smaller.
It's a lot smaller than.
Yeah.
Smaller than our dead friend over there.
Now here's a quiz time. What were you supposed to remember about the Chinook salmon specifically, Bill?
They have a mostly black mouth.
Okay.
And the
Black
king,
mouths.
The king salmon has the black and white.
Wait, the
around the
Chinook
lip.
is the king.
Chinook is the king.
Oh, so I was
Coho
wrong.
is the other.
Oh, that's what I meant.
You started out good. You started out
The
good.
coho has the white gum.
Yes, they have the white gum line.
Okay.
So that contrasts against their black mouth. So it looks
Got
like some
it.
banding there.
Okay.
Good job. You guys did well.
I forgot too. I was just wondering if you remembered because I didn't.
He's right here now.
Oh, nice. He's actually bigger now that now that he's closer.
Look at that.
Still smaller, but
But at this meeting, there was really concerned charter captains there. Because you got to remember, like, people's livelihoods now depend on this. You're looking at charter captains, motels, restaurants, so people are really concerned. So that's when I was like, wow, this is a really complicated issue. And I was telling myself kind of what I just told you. We are managing to promote healthy populations for the invasive alewife in order to sustain a healthy population of a non-native predator, the
Right.
specific salmon. To somebody, to folks like you, I bet you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, that's the craziest thing ever. And,
Yeah.
and it kind of is, you know, in a way there. So I also learned that there is a degree of natural reproduction out in the tributaries, which is something I grew up hearing that like, no, like they all die, people take them, it's not good spawning habitat. And I looked into some studies, and kind of the average percentage of natural reproduction is like 47% of the Chinook salmon they sampled, usually ones that have spawned out and died along the sides of the tributaries. They determined that about 47% are wild. So it's like, oh, there's some natural reproduction occurring. And they're able to determine that because, at least back then, they would clip that adipose fin. That's why I mentioned it. So if
okay.
you see a salmon, the adipose fin's missing, that is a fish that was stocked. If you don't, it could be wild.
Can you just remind us, since adipose came up a while ago, what is the adipose
It's
fin?
that tiny little fin, no rays. It's just like a little piece of fatty tissue. It just looks like a bump on the fish, and it's closest to their tail fin.
Is it on the top?
It's on the top.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
The
their second
dorsal?
dorsal fin.
Okay.
Yep.
The small rear dorsal fin with a clip out of it.
Yeah, so they'll just cut that off.
Oh, could totally cut off.
Yeah, they'll clip it.
Okay.
But some hatcheries, like, there's no way they do it all the time. I also read that during COVID, they didn't do that part of the process for a while. And what they'd also
They
done...
keep a 6-foot distance from the
yeah,
fish.
6 foot distance from the fish. In 2005, that's when they came out with this, I can't remember the name of the machine, but it also put this like wire tag in the salmon. So when they were surveyed by management agencies, they could see where that salmon came from to determine like, is it spawning where it was stocked? Did it stray somewhere else? Like those sorts of things. So that's how they come up with those estimates of
okay.
wild versus whether it's a stocked fish or not.
So if they stop stocking, then would these fish would disappear then?
It would take a long time because there is a decent degree of natural reproduction, but it would not be this big fishery that it is.
What were you saying, like 46%?
Yeah.
47.
That's high. I think.
That changes too though, because like right now I bet it'll be a lot lower because these salmon that are pushing in, the water's really warm. That's not good for dissolved oxygen, and it's not good for them and their health either. So it does vary immensely. So it's one of those things. It's like, how long would it last? Now
They're also thinking like reproduce in this economy.
that was good. That was good. I believe in the 1990s they ceased stocking Chinook salmon in Lake Erie because they depend so heavily on the alewives, and Lake Erie is shallower, so there wasn't a lot of deep water access for alewives to get to in the wintertime to stay somewhat warm. They're sensitive to cold, so the alewives never really dominated in Lake Erie. So the salmon fishery wasn't very good, but every year, like I know somebody in Cattaraugus Creek that catches a Chinook salmon. They haven't been stocking them there for decades now.
Wow.
So, you know, that speaks to that. They'll be around for a bit, but it is dependent on this very heavily managed stocked fishery.
Do you recall off the top of your head how deep Lake Erie gets? Because
I do not. I'm sorry, Professor Domsky, I failed you.
I do know that it is the most shallow, but when you compare it to something like, I think it's Lake Superior, that goes more than 1,000 feet.
Yeah,
deep,
yeah. Lake Superior can engulf the other 4.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
But yeah, Lake Erie is nothing compared to that. I just wish I knew the number. Yeah.
So back to what I was saying about the people being really upset. It's because of the money, that's their livelihood. I also saw there was a review from Sea Grant. It was an economic paper in 2009 regarding Lake Ontario, and you could see drops in fishing license sales that correlate exactly with Chinook salmon stocking. So you're looking at fishing license sales dropping. There's kind of a nationwide trend in people, you know, not buying fishing licenses as much and that passion, you know, decreasing. But
do you know if you see it with other kinds of hunting licenses? Or is
like with
fishing-
hunting too? Or
Yeah, Oh,
yeah.
I would imagine.
That's on the decrease, yeah.
So
That's why they keep lowering the hunting age in different states, just because they're trying to encourage.
I might start
More
out.
We're gonna get
If there's so many, available licenses.
There's
Your
gonna be
son's
8-year-olds
what?
smoking cigs and shooting that.
Almost 18 months.
Your son's 18 months.
If he wants to go hunting with his grandpa, my dad still hunts. So.
There you go. There was also that a 2007 study concluded the Lake's Chinook salmon fishery provided the state with approximately $113 million annually. That's just New York State. So I mean, it's a big fishery. That's why it's all hail the king. So I wanted to look a little bit more into this big link between the alewives and the Chinook salmon, and I came across a few articles that were talking about this alewife crash in Lake Huron in 2003, and then how the Chinook salmon fishery crashed after that. And the saying now is like, yeah, you've had some better years, but they stopped stocking them in most places in Lake Huron because of this. And that fishery is really like on its way out. So they're talking about the changes that are happening with the alewife populations. So the alewives like to eat phytoplankton, very small microorganisms, fish larvae, and they like areas with a lot of nutrients. Nutrient abatement programs in the 1970s cut back on some of the nutrients dumping into the lakes, but they think a big factor were the invasion of the zebra and quagga mussels from the Black and Caspian Seas in 1988 and 1989, because they came in on the ballast water of ships from those regions. I mean,
So you have one invasive species harming another invasive species.
so you can see how crazy this gets.
Yeah.
The Great Lakes
and
is all invasive
just,
species.
These guys are just big or little water filters.
They
so-
filter out a lot of water.
Because I remember being out on Lake Erie when I was a lot younger, like out with some friends on their boats or whatever, and like you could see down,
Yes.
like to the ground. I mean, in certain parts in shallow areas, you could see down to the ground. And I was told that before the introduction of the zebra mussels and quagga mussels, right?
Yep.
You couldn't do that. Like the water was a little bit more
Turbid.
turbid. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that led to the misconception for a lot of people that the lakes have been cleaned up by the
Right.
zebra and quagga mussels. And it's like, no, this isn't good. Like, you don't want,
Yeah.
you want it the way it was.
It shouldn't
you
look
know?
like a swimming pool.
Yeah, it should
Right.
not look like a pool.
It shouldn't look like your Brita filter, your pitcher.
So that decreased nutrients, and I think that's a big part of what hurt the alewives, is the introduction of these zebra and quagga mussels. And they've impacted, I mean, they're one of, if not the most significant invasive species in the Great Lakes region, because they're affecting the food webs at the bottom level by cycling out all these nutrients and such. So, you know, that you can spend all day just talking about the impacts of those.
That's funny because I can remember when I was in elementary school in the 80s, we would learn a lot about sea lampreys. And now you hardly hear anything about sea lampreys.
Right.
Yeah.
Other than like, what the hell is that?
Right.
But-
Looks like something from like an alien movie or
Right.
something.
They're still around. I've seen them. I've caught fish with lamprey scars on them.
Wow.
I don't know. It's got to be DEC, I think. They put lampricide into Cattaraugus Creek every so often around the time when I fish for channel catfish there. And I'm just going to say it. They say it only affects the lamprey, but just coincidentally, whenever they do this, there's tons of dead catfish like the next day. So it's interesting. But
Sounds like
it's
a
a necessary
coincidence.
evil. Yeah. It's like-
I'm very curious what the lampricide is now. I kind of want to look that up.
So, in the Death and Life of the Great Lakes, they talked about the formation, and I'm sure it's a lot different. It sounded like they'd have this like secretive lab where companies would send unmarked, because if they ended up sending the miracle lampricide, they wanted to patent it and everything.
Right.
So they sent unmarked bottles to people that were testing it by dumping it in a tank with a rainbow trout, a pretty sensitive fish, a bluegill, a pretty common warm water fish, and a sea lamprey. And the goal was find something that'll kill the sea lamprey and have no visible effects on the trout and the bluegill. So they're like, well, we dumped something in, we walked away, we came back, and all the water was gone. It just vaporized all the
Wait,
water.
what?
Yeah, they mentioned that. They mentioned like stuff would kill all three of the fish, stuff would change.
Yeah.
And then
They turned into monkeys.
and then like I need to dig this. Dan Egan talks about it in his book, and I mean I trust him, but like I want to look into the details because that's crazy.
Right.
Like you're gonna use
Well, let's just say there's no way that's true.
The water disappearing?
There's no way.
in the 60s.
Anything's possible.
In the
The
60s?
guy was on shrooms.
like can you imagine using a bluegill and a rainbow trout as the proxy for all the life? We're gonna put that in.
Okay, that part I believe. All the water disappearing out of it is what I'm saying I don't believe.
You
So
never know.
it brings into some question.
But that's how they found it. They found something
it
where
brings into question the sobriety of some of these researchers.
hey, they can't all be good like you, Steve.
No, they turned around to a tank that hadn't been filled yet. And like, oh no!
Yeah, but there wouldn't have been.
The fish are gone too.
Because I imagine like the bluegill. I'm like, what was happening with the bluegill and the rainbow trout on the lamprey? Were they just like flapping around like? Oh,
Wow.
It
All right.
totally vaporized the sea lamprey and all the water. but
Everything
the
gone.
bluegill was fine.
The bluegill's just sitting there.
And the
Hey, what's up?
rainbow trout and the bluegill were fine.
So this was in Dan Egan's book?
Yes.
All right, we're going to have to look into this.
Oh my God, yeah, so please look into that. I'm like gonna pass out. But that's how they allegedly found out this lampricide that ended up working in a way to control the lamprey. But they are still a problem. They're still around, and there's still a lot of countermeasures to kind of keep them in check. So I'm talking about the 2017 cuts in the Chinook salmon due to the lower alewife populations. So you were looking at a point where, like, I think it was like the 80s, there were over 3 million Chinook salmon being put into Lake Ontario. Then it dropped down to an average of like 1.7 million, like through like the 90s and early 2000s. Then it was dropping in the 2017, 18, 19 to like 900,000, 800,000, numbers around there. And this was to help boost the alewife population, right? Which, again, just sounds kind of crazy.
Hey, based on what I said earlier today, they seem like they're doing okay, the alewives.
Yes.
We shocked up a lot of them.
We're managing very heavily for them.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Tonawanda Creek.
Tonawanda Creek? Yeah. So the 2013 and 2014 winters were very cold, and that's what caused big alewife die-offs, and that's what led to these cuts. But I was reading a lot of forums from around that time, and it was all charter captains, and they were very concerned. But in 2018, that was like a banner year for king salmon. So people were like, was there a big crop in 2016 of wild produced fish that supplemented this? I mean, you can just see you have natural reproduction, you have the stocking, you have alewipes, you have changing conditions.
Yeah.
The main fish is not even from around here. It's adapted to the Pacific Northwest. You can just see how diverse this is. And the management aspect of this has just got to be crazy.
No, I'm sorry. Earlier, and I apologize if you said this and I just missed it, but you said that alewife was a problematic invasive.
Yes.
Did you explain what was the issue with them?
Yeah, the biggest thing that people cared about at the time was their population would explode so rapidly, and then they, think they're originally from oceans. They're anadromous themselves. Oceans don't have the temperature fluctuations our Great Lakes do, being even bigger than our Great Lakes. So they're a bit more sensitive to those fluctuations. And also, spending more time in salt water. They thought that all the fresh water in here did something to their bodies as well. So they would raise in population and then have these big die-offs in beaches. And it wasn't just that time in 1967 in Chicago.
Yeah,
a 30-mile stretch of shoreline covered in dead rotting fish, in some places ankle deep. That cost millions of dollars to clean up. And who knows what would you say in finances, the opportunity cost of all the tourism and stuff that would have gone away during that time.
Yeah, suddenly no one is on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just that aspect of it, let alone what the alewives do with other aspects of the native fish, which I'll talk about that in a bit too.
I recall all these dead fish, the thing you brought up earlier about the dead fish. That would definitely be a huge turnoff for everyone.
Literally everyone.
The shore, the water itself.
And it would have been interesting to see the impact the alewives would have had if there still were healthy levels of lake trout and whitefish and other predators. The thought that Dan Egan says is that they might have just slipped into the food chain and just kind of became one of those non-native but not really problematic
naturalized
fish. Yeah, naturalized. But the thing is, they hang out in different water columns from the lake trout usually. So lake trout eat them, but not to the degree the salmon do. So the salmon are very good at keeping their population in check, and that was a big reason why they were put in, to establish the world's greatest fishing hole and to control the alewife population here.
Okay.
So I talked about that with the alewives, and now what I wanted to look at was, what are the impacts on our native fish of doing this? I'm sure that's the big thing that you guys would like to learn about here.
Especially since you said at one point Lake Michigan was 91% of the biomass was alewives.
Alewives, yeah. A fish biomass.
So surely everything has changed.
Yeah.
At that point.
So I wanted to know, first off, you got to say who has a similar niche to the Chinook salmon. Those are the ones that are going to possibly have problems. So I thought about lake trout. They're both the two big fish predators of the lake. And what I thought, and what a lot of people thought, was lake trout being more benthic, so they're more at the bottom, feeding at those levels of the water column, and the salmon being more pelagic, they're a little bit more suspended in the water column, that they're not going to overlap that much in terms of how they hunt. And that has been shown to be the case, at least to a significant degree. And there was one study I found that did a study on that. They put 278 permanent fixed station acoustic telemetry receivers in Lake Ontario, and then they tagged a bunch of lake trout and Chinook salmon to try and see like where they're going, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much what they noticed. Like sometimes they would explore in different water columns and come into contact with each other, but usually they occupy different spaces in the water column. So I looked into some studies and the impacts that the alewives play. And the one study I came across from 2008, it was a paper entitled Adverse Effects of Alewives on Laurentian Great Lakes Fish Communities. So they tested the ideas like alewives prey upon fish larvae, maybe they outcompete them for spawning territory. So they did a bunch of different studies, and they mentioned previous studies. But with the lake trout section, they noticed that lake trout recovery, so a lot of the natural reproduction that they found occurring, the natural recruitment, in Lake Superior and Lake Huron was strongly correlated to low alewife abundance. So in Lake Huron, when the alewife started to collapse, we're starting to notice higher natural recruitment of lake trout. Could be a coincidence, but they looked into that further. So naturally reproduced yearling lake trout that were also first caught in bottom trawl surveys in Lake Ontario only after adult alewives delayed their migration to that zone in the spring of 1993. So there's not a lot of natural reproduction of lake trout in Lake Ontario. In Lake Erie, they don't know if there's any. There's a good amount in Lake Superior. There's more in Lake Huron, some in Lake Michigan. But they're noticing that, like, hey, there was a boost in the natural reproduction when the alewives didn't occupy the zone this year, or when the alewife population dropped before that. So that's some evidence right there. So in studies, spawning stocks of lake trout succeeded in areas devoid of adult alewives, but places close by in nearby reefs where there was spawning, where there was high alewife abundance, there was hardly any natural recruitment. Reduced survival of lake trout eggs and fry was also observed from parent lake trout having a diet rich in alewives. So this is another problem, and that's the thiaminase. You might have heard about this with other fish. It's a substance in a lot of baitfish that causes the predator, if they get enough of it, it doesn't allow them to like process thiamine and get that vitamin that they need, and there can be health complications from that. It can happen with turtles too.
Thiamine, is that like one of the bees or something?
Yeah, I think it's B12.
Okay.
So that's why I had to feed my alligator snapping turtle like Pleiades and mollies instead of, people feed them like goldfish. And,
Mollies?
yeah,
Like
they're
the drug?
Little
Exactly.
a fish species. I saved that molly for me.
Oh, got it.
He gave his turtle roofies.
Oh my god.
Jeez, Bill.
All right, so I want to make sure I'm getting this right. So
Okay.
the idea is that lake trout aren't doing well where alewives are, possibly because they're eating so many of the alewives that then they can't reproduce.
Yes. Well, they're eating the young, either the eggs or the larva. So that's one. Or the adults are eating the alewives. They're getting into thiaminase, and that's not allowing them to reproduce properly.
Okay.
Man, so I don't know a lot about fish, but that result surprises me. Like I guess I didn't even consider that it's not that maybe the alewives were eating them at a really young life stage or something, or the egg or whatever. Like that's sort of what I was like, oh, maybe that's what's going on. But no, it's that the alewives are being eaten, and that's why the trout aren't doing well.
It's both. It's like a 1-2 punch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not to mention, when they're eating other microorganisms, they're competing with the young, native baitfish around our Great Lakes as well. So that's something to think about there.
And you said lake trout and alewives are both like you said benthic, so they're a little bit deeper.
The lake trout are benthic.
Oh.
So they're not going to prey on the alewives like the salmon do.
Okay.
But they still do it to a degree.
Okay.
In some areas their diet's going to be a little bit more rich in alewives, and those are the ones that got hit with the thiaminase problem.
Okay.
There was another study that was
because you said in the shores or like closer to shore, the more shallow areas is where
because the alewives go on these migrations. They'll change where they are throughout the year. Lake trout go to different places, so they assessed where the alewives are moving and where the lake trout's life cycles were. In places where there was overlap, that's when they were seeing problems with lake trout. So that's one of the things that they deduced from that. There's also tank studies that showed predator avoidance response, I don't know why, by lake trout larvae was to swim up in the water column. So lake trout that swim up in the water column now enter the alewives territory and they get gobbled up. So that would render them susceptible
When
as
they're
well.
little.
When they're little, yeah.
When the lake trout are
Yeah,
little.
you're not going to have a 20-pound lake trout get eaten by an alewife.
Well, maybe he's getting eaten by like 100 of them. He's like, oh my god.
Piranhas. So the other native fish was the Atlantic salmon. So that's the only Atlantic species. All the other salmon are Pacific. They were once very abundant in Lake Ontario drainage, but they were extirpated from that system just prior to the end of the 19th century. So you're looking at a while ago. It was due
Steve,
to...
That means the 1800s.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, guys. I imagine there's a story there that I'm not getting.
No.
I'm sure we've messed it up before.
Well,
but-
tell me later when the mic is up. This is due to overharvest, the construction of mill dams that prevented their migratory runs. Again, that's really early. That's before a lot of these other problems that we talked about. So in the 1870s, there were these stocking programs that had a decent degree of success, but they noticed that when the alewife started to increase in numbers, there was a lag, and then the Atlantic salmon started experiencing a lot of problems. They were found to be highly susceptible to the thiaminase problem. So they get hit really hard by that. There's another study that I found titled Atlantic Salmon Conservation Impeded by Chinook Salmon from 2003. And what this did was it said, it's not just the alewipes, it's not just the habitat loss. These Pacific Chinook salmon, because they spawn at about the same time as the Atlantic salmon in similar places, there has to be some detriment there because the Chinook salmon are bigger. So they took these 8 fenced off regions of good spawning habitat in a creek in Toronto, Orono Creek, and they released Atlantic salmon into all of them, and they put Chinook salmon into 4 of them. And they observed, and they noticed that the Atlantic salmon that shared space with the Chinook salmon, they didn't spawn as well. They were acting a lot more aggressive. They were agitated. They were being chased by Chinook salmon. So there was a big response to the presence of Chinook salmon.
Oh.
So the Chinook salmon, through the alewife management, hits lake trout really hard, but also just the Chinook salmon themselves impede on conservation of Atlantic salmon. And there's a lot of people that are pro king salmon that dislike the stocking efforts of Atlantic salmon because they will impede the stocking efforts of Chinook salmon. So it's this kind of like native fish that aren't doing real well versus this non-native fish that is driving a lot of money, and people are colliding over that. So it's a big topic of debate. You should bring that next one into your wilderness class there, because it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one there.
Who we're going to favor? Which species we're going to favor?
People get really heated about this topic because you have a lot of people that are pro-native fish, but then others say, hey, look, the Great Lakes is never going to be like it was.
Right.
You know, some people have their idea of conservation and management. That chipmunk is being very rude. Some people have an idea of conservation and management to restore things back to the way they were before people f***ed everything up. But in some places like our Great Lakes, that's impossible. You're not going to do that with the zebra and quagga mussels, with everything that's occurred. It's nice to want to do that,
Right.
but in some areas it's just not feasible. Great Lakes is one of them.
You have to stop all the shipping and all that. You know.
Yeah, like what are you going to do? Like totally shut down everything and then
Right.
spend billions of dollars to clean it? Like it's not going to happen. They also say, you know, the lake trout that are being stocked here, they're strains that weren't even originally from here. The Atlantic salmon, they're not doing too well. It's really costly to introduce them to. So there's this big battle between king salmon and the native species programs. So I just want to hear what you two had to say about that.
I would say I'm unqualified to comment on that because I know so little. Because I don't think that an issue that complex, without really knowing the ins and outs and the fine details, like I couldn't give an informed opinion on that. You know what I mean?
I don't even know if anybody can, because
Right.
again, it's so regionally specific.
Right.
To me, a big factor is how costly is it going to be to continue to maintain the Pacific salmon fishery. So it really is a super, super complicated issue. Where at first glance, you know, you just want to say, and I do feel this way to a big degree, that no, we want to favor the native fish. If we have a chance to put the Great Lakes to any kind of resemblance of how it used to be, no, why wouldn't we do that? The Great Lakes is more than just a fishing hole. You know, it's one of the greatest ecological systems on the planet. 1/5 of the world's liquid accessible fresh water. It's more than just a fishing hole. I want it to be ecologically whole. I want it to be more resilient in the faces of changes in the prey and invasive species and all that stuff. And our native fish do that better than our Pacific salmon do. But how effective is that program with the native fish? And the money that the Chinook salmon generate is just, it doesn't compare. So at least for now, and I think for a while in the future, it's going to be, as I said before, all hail the kings.
Wow.
So,
I am glad you said that, though, because, you know, we were a little glib in how we said, well, we can't return the Great Lakes to what it was. And when we said that, we weren't implying that, well, you shouldn't do anything. But I like what you said. Hey, if we can move things back feasibly in a way that favors natives more, it should at least be investigated.
Exactly. That's what I say. It should be looked at. And a lot of people, you know, they're like, no, it's the Great Lakes are so different now. what are they really native? They're different strains. They don't perform the same role. Like these are, you're trying to restore a version of the Great Lakes that will never exist again. Let's continue to push it with a better fishery, this newer one. So it really is it's a crazy issue.
It's a hot mess.
It is a hot mess.
You just had looked like a merganser behind you, but they don't dive. So who was that?
There was a cormorant.
Well,
swimming
yeah,
around.
there's a cormorant.
I've been watching a cormorant.
Okay.
dive.
There
he
he
is,
is.
right in
Yeah,
front
there
of
we
us.
go. Whoa.
So
And some
You
people,
really meant behind him.
some people hate the cormorants.
Really?
oh yeah,
A lot of people.
But they're
do.
double crested.
they do. I did I did come into studies that talked about the role that
Ooh,
they
it got a
play
fish.
in eating like the salmon par and that stuff in the creeks, and that's part of why people really don't like them.
Yeah.
But that's a topic for another time.
But we should
Whoa.
point out that this cormorant, folks, it was, just its head was sticking out of the water and a little bit
Yeah.
of its neck, and it just keeps going underwater. It's acting like almost like a fish, just popping its head up now and then.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing to see.
Is it the anhinga that's called the water snake, or is it
Yes.
the cormorant that's called the water
Yeah,
snake?
the anhinga is the snake bird. They have more vertebrae in their necks, so their necks are a lot more flexible, so
Okay.
it looks like a snake.
And their
Got
beak
it.
Water turkey.
and their beak is more pointed.
Their
I
beak
see.
is totally pointed. It doesn't have the hook.
But the
like the
cormorant is sort
cormorant
of snaky in there, where it's just its neck and head are sticking.
No, they're
out.
very. They can be difficult to distinguish out in the field.
I've
Yeah.
confused them.
Yeah. Well, now that we've gotten through all that stuff about the salmon, do we want to take a walk and see if we can see more?
Sure. Yes.
That might be cool to do.
All right.
So what we're doing, folks, is we're walking upstream through 18 Mile Creek. Again, we're at the Burt Dam Fisherman's Park, and we're going to the impassable barrier, which is Burt Dam. And when you have these dam structures and salmon tributaries, the salmon that are instinctually moving upstream reach a dead end, the dam, and they can't go any further, so they stack up right there. So that's always where people congregate to fish, because that's where the most amount of salmon are. Now back, I fish for salmon every year. The first one I ever caught was here, and I didn't realize how crazy it gets here. I would get here at 2 in the morning before they'd open up the gates at like 6, and there'd be 20 cars lined up behind me. I'd come in, I'd get my waders on, and I'd sprint all the way to the dam to beat everybody, and I'd stand in the water for another hour and a half for the sun to rise and then fish. Because when I was a kid, I just wanted to catch a salmon so bad. When I was a kid, my dad told me about the big giant salmon he caught at Devil's Hole, and I just wanted to catch one. So I had no idea about all the things we just talked about. I just wanted to catch a big salmon.
Yeah.
But I remember times I'd come here and I'd be walking out in the water when it's still dark, and a salmon swam full speed into my thigh and totally took me out, like knocked me down. Like waders filled up with water and everything. It hurt. Like it felt like somebody punched my thigh really hard.
This was a zombie fish that
So-
you got tackled by?
No, probably not, because it was a little bit earlier on in the run.
Okay.
So,
So-
did you ever catch a salmon?
I did. This is where I caught my first ever
Oh, you said
salmon.
that,
Was
that's
here. Now that I've got a few under my belt, I try to avoid this place because it gets absolutely packed. Like during the peak of the run, when a lot of the salmon are in on a weekend, you'll have hundreds of people just underneath the dam.
Whoa.
I
It's
want to
wild.
address what I just said, because I want to make sure I didn't have a misunderstanding. Earlier you said that some people refer to them as zombie fish. Now my question is, are they zombie fish right potentially even up until the mating process, or is it after the mating process where they're zombie fish?
By the time they're doing the actual like construction of the reds, the laying of the eggs and milk, a lot of times they're already showing signs of decay.
Got
Yeah,
it.
but usually the post-spawn fish, those are the ones that really rapidly begin to degrade.
Got it.
And I'll see people catch the zombie fish and take them. And I asked this one guy, I said, "Hey, do you eat roadkill too?" And he was pissed. So,
New nature series, The Spawning Dead.
oh
wait.
yeah, no,
Oh,
for
no,
real.
not spawning. What's it called? The Running Dead.
The running dead.
yeah,
swimming
the
dead?
Swimming Dead.
But I mean, that's why this place is so nostalgic, because I used to come here all the time. And I've met some really awesome people down here. I've made some friends down here. So it's a cool place to come, and even if you don't like to fish, just to see the salmon just swimming around. I mean, you'll see a giant like 33-inch fish or bigger swimming in inches of water.
Whoa.
And it's just so interesting to see.
Now,
Oh, check this out. Check this
Oh.
out. There's a beaver. On the other side of the creek, there's a beaver munching on the log.
Holy
Holy,
moly.
look at that.
That's a big one. Are they all that big?
Oh my gosh. I've seen bigger.
Nah, that's
my gosh.
average, brother.
Wow. And it's still pretty light out too.
Yep.
This is awesome.
So he's got a log. He's cleaning the bark off of there.
Wow, yeah, it really stripped the bark off.
Man, they must be acclimated to people. Folks, the dam we're coming up on, this is not what I
A
pictured.
big concrete structure that definitely a beaver did not build.
This dam is probably what, 30, 40 feet high at
It's
least?
tall. Yeah.
Wow.
I did not realize that this is what we were going to be coming up to.
No.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a dam that people could stand on top of and fish off of the dam.
No, no.
Okay.
And I've seen many salmon attempt to hop that, not realizing the size of it.
I think koi could do it, based on Japanese mythology.
It's going to start to get real loud here with the water and also just the noise of whatever's going on with the dam.
So again, me not knowing much about fishing at all, especially this type of fishing, you have there probably 10 guys lined up pretty much right next to each other. So how do they not get lines tangled up? And
Well, it does happen. I've seen some pretty aggressive altercations back here. I've heard of like fights and all this stuff happening. But you know, you cast your line straight ahead of you, and you know, you don't cast to the right or left where the guys are. And if you have a group of people that know what they're doing, people don't cross you as much. Now, sometimes it happens, and like, oh, you know, it was an accident. It's no big deal. But every now and then, you'll see somebody come down and they're crossing people left and right, and then people yell at them or cuss them out or something. So it's pretty funny. Or the thing that happens is you'll hook a salmon, and it'll swim to the left or right. And then you'll have 4 people whose lines will get tangled around yours that feel your salmon and think it's theirs.
okay.
So yeah, so this gentleman's got one on.
I'm just imagining Daniel with waders on, gumming some chewing tobacco, and with a big salmon on his line.
So he see how he's telling people where the fish is going?
Oh, that guy's got something.
Yeah, he's got one. So we can get a little bit closer. It might just get louder, but we'll see. He's saying it's in the hole. That's the right in front of them, that deeper hole there. So there's also brown trout, steelhead trout. There's some other fish that run up this area too, but the king salmon's the big draw. So it's always interesting. You don't know what he has until they bring it close. But it's quite a spectacle. And this is like really quiet for this place.
And is
Like,
that because the
usually-
run's not that great?
Yeah,
right
it's not that great. It's a weekday evening. But yeah, when it picks up, if you get like a high water condition that caused the fish to just run up in mass, the following weekend, I mean, it gets crazy down here. See? I told you.
Yeah, that's wild.
Fish fights. I've heard guns have been pulled.
I
you
haven't
know?
seen a gun pull, but I've seen people fall in and fight.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I mean, if it was a $10,000 tuna, I'd fight somebody, but I'm not gonna for a salmon
well, you
here.
get the
Yeah.
outer ring and the inner ring.
Yeah.
See that? Then you got the guys that don't have waders that stand here.
Yeah.
And it's bad. I don't fish here, that's why I don't fish here.
But it's fun to just watch,
I do
right?
come down here for that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, that's a thing.
So yeah, this little deeper run right here that he's talking about, you'll have people lined up there.
They're catching nice browns right now, though.
Yeah, I saw a guy with a big
These
brown.
guys are all friends, too.
Yeah, they all
Most of
walk
these
down
guys,
together.
Yeah.
Oh, he lost it. Oh no, he's still
No, he's
got
got
it.
Got a nice one on right there.
Yeah. So he's the way that fish is fighting, it's
And then you
probably a
got that
salmon.
bird over there, see that bird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a beaver across the creek, just downstream a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go tackle it.
yeah.
yeah.
When it's like this, it's beautiful. You get a group of guys, and it's not packed. I mean, this is what you look for, you know? He's already got one on. This
Yeah,
thing.
he does.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That looks like a trout that he's got on the stringer, but
Here comes
the great blue heron comes and gets the.
I mean, I'm not eating no fish out of this water. Don't get me
Oh
wrong.
no, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. There's water quality issues with this place.
Yeah, they're actually redoing 18 Mile Creek. Did you know that?
So
Rehabbing it. They're digging it up and putting dirt to everything.
No.
Oh, wow.
18 Mile Creek rehab thing. For your podcast, so you should let them know. Yeah.
Thanks.
Right now,
'cause-
they're up by like Delphi. You can see all their construction equipment and everything. They're digging it out. I
Wow.
don't know how they're going to do it here.
the concern are the PCBs. And the
Oh,
New York
it's
State
bad.
Department of
It's
Health, originally, their advice was nobody should eat any salmon or fish out of here. And I would see people do it all the time.
And they say one a year. at the
Conditions have gotten better, and now they're saying one
most.
serving a
Nuts if
month.
you eat this shit.
Yeah.
Nuts. The mercury and all the, not even just the mercury, but all the other chemicals.
Oh, he missed it. Come on, net man. Come on.
And people be catching these fish and taking them back to their home states and smoking them and eating them, dude.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, a lot of license plates from all over the country I've seen up here. All right, you
He's
got
got
it.
it.
Look at
good
that.
fish, though, good
Yeah,
fish,
that's a
though.
salmon.
It's fun to catch them.
That's a good salmon. I know, yeah. So he's got the salmon in the net, and it's a big one, about 20 pounds or so. Cool.
All right. Do you want
All right, I'll
wrap
start
up
to
there?
walk back.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, take care, man.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Here, get on my right.
Oh, and then
What's
me.
your channel called? Are you on YouTube?
The field guides.
Actually,
Yeah.
it's called The Field Guys.
The Field Guys? I'll give you guys out, man. I'll you like to follow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Guys.
Yeah, guides. Yep. Take care, sir.
Go.
All right, guys, we just made it back to the parking lot. We walked up this hill. We're out of breath, and now Steve is going to do our wrap-up.
Yeah.
He needs a minute.
All right, guys, so first and foremost, we'd like to thank our growing list of Patreon supporters. So thank you to our new patrons, Evan, Kimberly R., and John. We also like to give a special shout out each month to our top patrons. So stick around to the end of the episode to hear Bill's daughter Violet share that list. And remember, if you'd like to be part of the Field Guides and read our Patreon list in a future episode, email us at thefieldguides@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron of our show on patreon.com. As a patron, you'll get access to our special patrons-only version of our episodes that include Bill sharing the episode notes. Because of support from our listeners, we've been able to keep the show free and make cooler episodes like our recent episode with the fisher researcher Scott LaPointe. Or you can make a one-time donation through PayPal on our website. A big thank you to Beverly P., who made a PayPal donation recently.
And don't forget that we have Field Guides merch available through our website store at thefieldguidespodcast.com. Remember, if you can't financially support the podcast, you can help out by sharing it with friends and family and by subscribing and leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps spread the word and allows us to reach a wider audience. We'd like to thank our newest iTunes reviewer, Nora Tamer.
So come and enjoy our sporadic posts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can always email us ideas for episode topics, criticisms, or your own stories of personal encounters with salmon at thefieldguides@gmail.com.
I don't like your tone, Steve.
With salmon.
And parents, remember to get your kids outside. Let them
Take
get
him fishing.
And take some fishing. Let them get muddy, dirty, flip over rocks and logs. And
Pay attention to how many fish you're allowed to eat per month.
yes. And if you don't have kids, make some time to get yourself outside and maybe go fishing. And folks, we will see you next time.
See ya.
Take care, everyone.
And here's Violet with this month's top patrons.
Eric, Alyssa, Adam, the Hebranks, Mary, Sung, Dr. Judy, Kimberly B., Peter R., Callie, Rich K., Orange Julianne, Daniel M., Diane, we named the dog Indy, Hot Dog Cold Weather, Dwayne H., Jennifer D., Jonathan A., Picasso 3, Mark S., Cecilia, Julie B., Dennis, Leslie H., Chris N., Jeff S., Colin G., Brant, Jonathan K., M.E., Plants in My Pants, Sean M., Ryan R., Sophie S., Connor H., Measured Principal, Fragaria papillonoidea, Outside Chronicles, Andrew C., Quixote, Max D. 2, Melissa Marie in Dusty, Arizona, Kelly S., Sarah S., Helen A., Judy F., Ben C., Jane H., Doodle Dude 82, Galen Mac, Kazzies, Esther C., John W., Mark V., Bethany H., Rob M., and Hannah M.
Well done, Violet.
That's a lot of patrons. That's a lot of patrons.
That is. We have a lot of patrons. And Violet's done it so often, I accidentally cut off some of the names, but you knew how to fill them right in, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Patrons, on behalf of Steve and Daniel, thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to us. And we will see you next time.
Bye.